We were just discussing trade balance and kind of the theory behind it. What I want to take a look at here real quick is some of the data on the U.S. economy. And just first, real quick, so that we've got a clarification here. We were talking about exports and imports here, and we know that this is really the goods and services, the physical product that is sold and who sells it, right? So if it's an export, if I just kind of, I don't know, I'm running out of space here. If we say, right, what is an export? Well, an export, this is a good, I'll say, or service that is produced by domestic companies and sold to foreigners, right? So produced domestic, it's produced domestically and sold abroad. And what are imports then? Well, and I don't want to kind of connect this with this down here, so I'll just keep it in the same color. The exports, well, the imports then, right? Imports, these are the goods and services that are purchased domestically, right? They are produced by foreign individuals. They are produced abroad and purchased here at home domestically by individuals within our economy. So we've talked about exports and imports before. Now I just want to kind of think through what's the actual data that we've seen here. So let me pull this up real quick. What I did was I went out to figure out a little bit of data on our trade balance. The Census Bureau keeps some of the historical data here, and this is all nominal data here. And what I've done is I've just simplified it into a couple charts here for us to take a look at. So the first chart is right up here, and what we're looking at is nominal dollars. This is in millions of dollars, right? And this is the U.S. trade balance by components, and there's two major components to trade. It is goods and services, and really what I want to do here, I know that textbooks typically talk about kind of the overall balance of trade. That's what this red line is here, net total trade here. But they don't often talk about the components, so I thought it would be useful to think through what's actually going on with kind of goods that we're selling and services that we're selling. So if you think about what goods and services are, right, I think we all have a pretty good feel for the goods. Goods are like, right, that's like manufactured goods, it's cars, it's things of that nature that we produce, that we manufacture, and that we send abroad. When we think about services, those tend to be like lawyer services, like healthcare. Those tend to be educational services, right? Those tend to be, when we think about other types of services, kind of in the digital economy, these tend to be services like music, and they tend to be kind of recording. They tend to be intellectual property that we produce here domestically, and we sell that software abroad. So it kind of gives us a little better feel for kind of goods and services. And here what I wanted to look, this is back to 1960 all the way to 2013, the latest year that we have full data for. And really what I wanted to focus on is you can see this big split. And so oftentimes we talk about having we have a negative trade balance, right? We have a trade deficit in America. We import more than we export. But there's a little bit more that goes on behind the scenes. We import a whole lot of goods, right? We import in 2013. This was we had a net balance of negative $700 billion worth of goods that we imported over what we exported. However, we export a lot more services in the American economy than we import. We are really good at medicine. We are really good at education. We are really good at lawyer services, right? We are really good at those type intellectual property rights. Those are services that we are really exponentially better at than a lot of other countries. And so it sometimes gets hidden in the fact when we talk about we have a negative trade balance, that is it is entirely driven by the negative trade balance that we have with goods. In fact, in services, we have a positive trade. We have a trade surplus in services. And so we can kind of see that here as the numbers get bigger, but over here when the nominal numbers are a little bit smaller, it gets a little more difficult to take a look at. So what I did is this second chart is doing the exact same thing. The only difference is this is in real terms. We're now looking at this data in terms of the percent of that year's GDP. So this is real, it's comparable over time. And we can see that kind of before 19 1976 or so, we were basically running kind of this red line, right? We were basically running a trade surplus, or we were trade neutral. We had a trade balance. And then we started having the effects of globalization, where kind of costs abroad were much lower, especially production costs and individual labor costs were lower abroad. So we started to see a lot of American manufacturers leaving here, right? And we started as individuals buying a lot of goods from China, from India, from Germany, right? Countries like that. But really, I want you to see that also, even as this continues to decrease, it is on a much larger scale than the increase that we've had here as a percentage of GDP of services. So we are a service. The majority of our economy by sector is service. We are no longer a majority manufacturing economy, but I think it's just kind of a useful thing for us to get a good feel for the differences between services and goods here. You can see that it's really the goods that are driving the trade balance, the trade deficit that we're having, but it's important to also realize that the services are an important growing part of our economy. And then if you put this in terms of overall GDP, if we just didn't do net here, if we weren't taking exports minus imports, if we were just looking at the total amount, it's a much larger percentage of GDP, kind of on the order of 5 to 7% of GDP. So useful things for us to take a look at and get a better feel for kind of the history of America over time.